And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the final week of the Upsurge Premier League. My name is Orbital. I'm joined here by Rebel Fox, and we are bringing you what is considered the closest group here, it seems, of the UPL. We have world-class Empyreans versus Mirage Esports for what is first place in their division.
Yeah, across all of the divisions, we have pretty definitive number ones, I think, in all of them. And number two, number three being battled out in a couple of different ones. But this is perhaps the closest at the top of the group. Mirage and World Class Empyreans both sitting at the 3-2 record. The winner takes everything tonight. Of course, it does lead to potentially what could be a tiebreaker, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, right now, I mean, the name of the game for both these teams right now, if you want to put yourself in a good situation, take that number one seed, take the series. Best way to say it.
Yeah, and again, this you see the standings on your screen right now. A lot of the teams have already locked it in. Running it down, I believe Maryville Esports in the Cloud Division have already made it in there so far, so they're sitting at a 4-1 record. I believe we will have an update, hopefully by the end of this match today, about where the Cloud Division sits. One of the more interesting, obviously, Infernal Division is still going on, at least for the battle for first place. It's between 100 Thieves and Radiance. Both those squads still battling out 100 Thieves sitting at 5-0, and Radiant sitting at 4-1. So that's going to be interesting as well to learn who makes it out in that first place scenario. Mountain, obviously, Supernova and Full Spectrum are sitting pretty solid at 5-0 and 4-2. So that's already locked in. And then finally, we have, or 6-0, very sorry. And then finally, again, the Ocean Division. So again, the only division, again, we talked about it a long time ago. This is what could be considered the group of life, and now kind of the group of death, where everything is almost neck and neck the entire way through.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the other divisions. I think there's some interesting caveats we've seen around scouting grounds. For example, I think Polar Ace taking a game off of 100 Thieves is a little bit of slap in the face to 100 Thieves, knowing that at least they're fallible by somebody's hands that isn't, one of the other top four teams, anything like that. Supernova, it's not Maryville, it's Polar Ace taking the game. So maybe a little bit of fear in the heart of Full Spectrum coming into the series there. But yeah, Group of Life, all these teams sitting around that very kind of middle tier area. You got two teams at 3-2, two teams at 2-3, willing to try to compete in this final week. And it would be interesting to see a tiebreaker come out between these two. But these have been competitive teams. I think even if you look at like Charlotte, Phoenix, and Life Support, those two are not teams that are weak by any standard. They can
Mm.
take games off the best. We've seen that. Empyreans and Mirage, the two that are sitting at the top of the division right now, have lost games to these teams in previous weeks.
Yeah, and so that also means that moving forward, this series should be extremely close. I think we were talking about it due to game score and due to just the minor differences, right? There is a specific scenario where we will end up, and that is if I believe it's if world class Empyreans win this series 2-1, we will be going to a tiebreaker between Mirage Esports and world class Empyreans for a final singular tiebreaker game, and that'll be very interesting if that does occur. However, again, 2-0 scenario, world class Empyreans just automatically get first place, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, and what's even more interesting, I think, is Mirage versus Empyreans has already happened. We've seen that series. Mirage took that series the first time around. But
Mhm.
if you look at what happened to both these rosters since then, there have been some changes. First off, Empyreans, they have Eclipse in the mid lane down. Rovax has moved into the support role. Since that has happened, Empyreans has looked like a revitalized team. They've had some new success. They found quite a few series, especially the ones that they're supposed to win that have been a little bit more flip-floppy at the beginning of the season, have now easily come their way. But then you talk about Mirage coming in, the 15-year-old Assylian had himself a split last play, coming in second behind 100 Thieves in their division. Didn't have much of a name for himself, but after Asta moved on to Academy here for Mirage, a big set of shoes to fill. Assylian comes in, and the only series they've lost since he's been on the roster was against Radiance, and you got to give him a lot of credit for that. That is not easy to do. They also split against the new as well. They went 1-1 against one of the top contenders. I would argue a lot of people have them in the top two or three very easily. Kid's got game. That's the best way to say it.
I mean, if you're 15, you're pushing challenger already. You gotta be this fearsome monster. And so looking forward, we see one team with a very heavy side towards that mid lane with Eclipse. And then on the other side, obviously, bot lane is going to be the main focus. So we are getting underway with the picks and bans. We'll see if that reflects, how these teams decide to ban away certain champions. World Class Empyrean, again, will be on the blue side for game number one. Mirage Esports will be on the red side already. We see the Trundle and Callista. So again, fairly standard bans coming out here.
Yeah, you would normally imagine things like Graves, Varus, Syndra to come through on red side entirely, but to me, I think both teams on red side need to pay attention to this Kalista pick. Both ADCs play it to a very high standard of play, and it's very strong right now in the meta. I think there's a clustering of a few ADCs that sit at the top. No one's really definitively outside of Varus really breaking through to that next S tier, but Kalista's right there. A lot of in-game pressure, a lot of in-lane pressure, and that ultimate engage coming out from the champion is invaluable in the late stages coming out of the ADC position.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about ADC. That is a total of 4 ADCs taken off the table. Corki, again, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt right there, sneaking in as a mid and ADC person. But again, Aphelios, Kalista, Varus, all taken off the table. So we are dropping, I want to say, down to A- to B tier ADCs here pretty soon if the bans continue like this.
We still do have Ezreal, who is a really good champion for Asilion, and leaving Graves up is almost a bait here so that World Class takes that, but that is going to lock you in the Ezreal, be able to take something like Thresh if you want. Instead, it's the Ornn first overall, and again, that gives you the priority of the bottom lane and the Graves, and that's going to come through for Mirage real quickly.
Yeah, and just like you pointed out, Graves and Ezreal both napped up, and, you know, World Class Empyrean, obviously, they picked the Ornn first, so they had to have been aware that this was going to happen. We'll have to see if they have something in response here.
The thought is that you have something prepared for the Graves. In this case, the Olaf has been rising in popularity. I've actually seen City Witty begin to pick the champion up with something like the phase rush, kind of revitalizing the champion. The same thing happened with Trundle a little while back, where Trundle with Conquer was falling off a little bit. You throw a phase rush on it, now you got a new champion altogether, so you're going to go have that one. Now, the Senna would be an interesting pick. I don't know if it sets up perfectly, especially with the bottom lane. They're going to have to wait and see what the support role is. I would imagine this is going to be Thresh for Mist. He's a very good Thresh player, very good champion, fits well with Ezreal, and most importantly, roams really well. But the Senna's interesting. Oh, they're going to go Yuumi. Okay, I was curious if the Yuumi was going to go World Class, but they're going to snatch it up here.
Yeah, already locking that one in and getting one of the most, I want to say, annoying bot lanes that you could ever encounter, Ezreal Yuumi. Going to be locked in there. We are on to the next ban phase here. So it looks like the bottom lane is starting to flesh out here for World Class Empyreans. And we have the jungle and bot lane set for Mirage Esports. So very staggered bans expected coming into this next ban phase.
The Diana band's very targeted, but I like that one. I also like the Azir band they're hovering right now. I think that it's played very well by Robbie Bob, and his ability to cancel out the mid lane play just with that champion alone has been really good throughout most of the season. I'm still a little bit upset World Class opted for the Senna instead of the Yuumi. I'm a big fan of the Olaf Yuumi. I think it's one of the best pairs of champions you can get between like two roles that don't usually fit together. Mm-hmm. But of course, that usually requires any Ezreal. You can't leave Senna alone in the lane. So now it's the Yuumi. Graves, also a big fan. Not as big as the Olaf Yuumi, but still something.
Reminds me of the days where Olaf used to run Redemption on himself first item and just like bull rush his way through. And that was awful to play against, but we do have 4 mid lane bans now, so 4 ADCs taken off the table. ADCs were kind of picked up, and so they said, all right, just, you know, we don't want the mid lane to play anymore. Lulu picked up, so that is going to be the funnel Graves coming out here for Mirage Esports, and Yasuo possibly in response.
Would be interesting to see the Yasuo. You have the setup with the Ornn, but you don't have anything else particularly. The Ziggs would be another interesting option to just consistently push out the wave and make sure you can't get that as often. Now, the Ziggs does get grabbed. I want to make sure that was the case because I think they were close to running out of time. Yeah, that was actually Yasuo. Yeah, Ziggs is Yasuo. That was confirmed. I thought that was the case, but they ran out of time there. So that's not going to be the Ziggs. It's going to be the Yasuo. Yeah, it'll be on the stream correctly. Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Hyper. You're a fantastic producer. Everybody loves you. And then the Victor is going to be the final hover here.
Yeah, if that is locked in, that's going to be a spicy lane overall, and it is. So that is going to be Yasuo potentially in the bottom lane. I mean, we've seen Victor flex in that bot lane carry position as well.
Yeah, the curiosity comes out is that, you know, the Yasuo is a melee champion pairing with the Senna, which isn't all too bad, but certainly you have the healing behind it, but it's difficult to make things happen as the Yasuo, especially into the likes of Ezreal, Yuumi. You're never finding a kill in that lane. And the Victor is something that can get pushed in by the Lulu early on. In fact, I remember in early 2015 or mid 2015, when I first started watching this game, it was the Victor and Lulu were 2 meta champions, but Mirage never ceases to stop impressing me. The Jax gets locked in for the Jax main himself, Tony Top getting his namesake character.
Yeah, and I mean, you're pitting a tank versus Jax, and I mean, the Grandmaster himself will enjoy using that lamp to the best of his ability. and we'll have to see how that one plays out. We are getting into the actual ban phase here, so taking a look, obviously we can't see who's going mid and bottom lane for World Class Empyreans just yet, so I want to focus on the lanes that we do know about. Top lane, with that Ornn and Jax, you know, we've seen Ornn tower over some other champions in the top, but again, Jax is Tony Top's one of his best, if not the best champion for him. Do you see that going in a specific direction?
I have watched Tony Top on the Jax go down 6 kills and 50 CS to his lane opponent, which happened to be against Maryville. And I kid you not, he would have 1v2'd. He was about an auto attack off 1v2ing. This man does not lose on Jax, even if he's losing on Jax. It's impossible to see it happen. What you have to do now for on the side of World Class, you've got 2 opponents. You've got Tony Top, and then you've got the rest of Mirage. You have to beat both in order to take the game. Again, earlier in the season or earlier in the scouting grounds, I watched it happen for Maryville, but it is a tall order. It's not easy to accomplish. You got to get this Olaf to pressure this top lane, get Speedo to a place where he's not just going to get bullied out by this Jax constantly in the lane phase.
Yeah, and we're having the rest of the lanes lock in here. Olaf versus Graves in the jungle. We touched on that as well, but we finally see it. The Victor versus Lulu in the mid lane, and then Yasuo going in the bot lane, and actually Rovex is taking that one. So a little bit of a mix-up here, I want to say, or a little bit of a curveball being thrown in the bottom lane for World Class Empyreans.
Not shocking. Rovex is a filled mid laner. He came from mid lane, so it's not shocking that he has the champion in his pool. And again, the Yasuo in the Senna, there's quite a bit of value to having a Yasuo combined with the Senna to scale up into a couple crit items, have that the versatility and the strength that a Yasuo can bring without all that much threat. The Ezreal and the Yuumi, it's very safe. You're not going to kill it, especially with the Senna and a melee champion in that bottom side, but you aren't really going to get a massive advantage. You got to push if you're the Yasuo Senna, get out on the map if you want to generate early advantage, or sit there, collect your items as needed, and come into the mid game.
Yeah, and I want to now put our attention towards that mid lane specifically, because we have 2 vastly different directions being taken. One side we see pretty much a hard shove, hard carry with the Victor, and on the other side, a lot of hopes being placed on Hayami through that Graves and Lulu combination. Do you see this playing out in a certain direction, or is it going to be pretty much farm until mid to late game for the side of Graves and Lulu?
This is an exceptionally strange composition to look at, because what you've got is like 2 ADCs and 2 enchanters, but they are intensely difficult to kill when you think about it. I mean, you're thinking, oh, 2 enchanters, 2 ADCs, we pop them, we're done. How are you going to fight against a Graves and an Ezreal with a Yuumi and a Lulu? Like, what are you going to do? What it's required now of the side of Empyreans is to have Ornn in your fights. You need the ultimate to set up for Olaf running in, for Yasuo to be able to ult in, and to get all the damage you need onto this member, because outside of the Victor and the Senna, you're not getting all the damage you need, especially with the Yuumi healing up people and all the mobility from Graves and Ezreal. So now that you're forcing 5 people to fight 4, that's pressure that Tony Top gets on the top side. You get Tony Top rolling, or if he's even coming into the mid game, you got to be terrified that he can win the map on his own.
Yeah, very much the split push potential and the 4-man squad coming out of the double ADC and double enchanters means that one of those ADCs is going to be friggin' massive. So looking, finally, I want to see this early game. Do you see a lane being specifically targeted in the early game, or do you think it's going to be fairly quiet?
I think top really does have to be the focus in this one, not just because of the Jax, but again, Speedo getting around the map is far, far more valuable than keeping him in a side lane just responding to waves. It's the only knockup that's actually available here outside of, if you want to say, the gravity field, if you have somebody pulled. It doesn't even pull into the center anymore, never mind. The only ultimate that you've got that sets up Yasuo's ultimate is going to be Ornn. So Ornn's got to be the knockup for the Yasuo to set up into a very mobile composition. The earlier you get things done, the more gold you've got to try to generate those fights come kind of the neutral objective game a little bit later on. So I think Speedo, get him some early pressure from City Witty, get him priority on the wave, get him on the map, and try to get things ahead so that you can go into the mid game with an advantage.
All right, well, there you go. That is the predictions. Looking forward towards this early game, but we will be right back after a word from one of our sponsors, and we will be right back with game number 1 between World Class Empyreans and Mirage Esports. Don't go anywhere.
Started with a vision of quality, a vision of uniformity. We took the time to create something familiar yet refreshing, something with a bit of change.
Designed to fit any brand's unique vision.
It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity.
A summoner has disconnected.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to game number 1 on the Rift with these two awesome squads. On the blue side, we do have world-class Empyrean. Rounding that out, top lane will be Speedo, jungle, City Witty. In the mid lane, Eclipse, the man to watch out for. In the ADC role, or in the bottom lane, we'll just say, it is Rovex and Lost in a Moment.
And on the red side, we have Mirage Esports. We got the Jax player, Tony Top, in the top lane. Hayami in the jungle. Robbie Bob in the mid lane. Asilian, the Child Wonder, coming in at ADC. And I Will Find You. That's also Mist at the support role.
Yeah, that is... honestly, like we said, these two compositions have drastically different directions that they're going to take. So it's going to be so fun to take a look at these early stages. We already see some shenanigans top lane, trying to push out Tony Top, get a little bit of damage down, and trying to test the waters a little bit.
Yeah, able to sit there. You're going to see him likely skill check Speedo very early on here. He tends to do it with the Jax pick, and I can tell you he's not going to win the skill check because I'm just going to say it right now. Like, I don't think I've ever seen anybody win the skill check up against the level 1 Jax with Counter-Strike. It's such a strong ability that you're able to do so much with it. The other thing I want to mention, just in the beginning, okay, I'll wait through the skill check here.
Yeah, they exactly called it, and immediately about a fourth of Speedo's HP is gone. And I mean, you called it right there. So already the check has been done. Speedo lost a little bit. One charge of the corrupting potion has been burned by Tony Top. So, take it as you will.
What is nice is that Speedo, unlike most top laners, or at least a lot of top laners, didn't go into the refillable pot and then end up building the Doran's Shield. He had the Doran's Shield coming out knowing that this was a possibility, thankfully, able to mitigate a fair amount of that damage, but it could have been a lot worse.
He's like, all right, listen. I know I'm going to get checked. I'm not that good, so we'll play the safe route. That's all it is. It's a very smart move, honestly. It's, 4D chess out of 3D chess, so... Again, smart move on his part, as we do see some aggression being laid down in pretty much every single lane so far.
Yeah, I was going to make mention right before we had started this. We talked about compositional issues that may arise a little bit later on into the game. It's going to be imperative, especially for the 4-man squad of Mirage, to have vision around the map, especially in kind of the shallow river on the opposing side, to make sure they can keep track of where's Eclipse moving, where's City Witty moving, where is this Yasuo moving specifically, because you can either bring the Yasuo to Speedo or Speedo to the Yasuo, and because of that, you worry about, okay, what does this composition do? You have protection in the likes of the Enchanters, but you have to bring 2 members anytime you want to get advanced warding, which is a lot of pressure off the map. I am a little bit concerned for that prospect a little later on. I'm curious how they can kind of problem solve that issue coming through, that they need almost 2 of their members to go out and get vision.
Yeah, and tossing 2 to the wind like that, it is very dangerous. You run the risk of always losing a few, or losing momentum a little bit faster. A big point in case is that mid lane, though. Robbie Bob in that mid lane has forced Eclipse to farm under his tower, which is pretty surprising to see a Lulu of all things do that. But again, pressure from Mirage in the mid lane, surprisingly, whereas bottom lane also, Asilian and Mist getting shoved out on this Yuumi Ezreal.
Yeah, not shocking to see that on the bottom side. The mid lane also not intensely shocking. Again, Lulu, actually a really strong early game champion in a lot of regards. You can play a very harass-heavy style, has good clear with the glitter lance and such. And again, with your E being able to be in an offensive or a defensive mood, your W is such a good ability for CSC. I think Lulu's pressure is kind of underrated as a support out of the mid lane. And for a while, it disappeared, but I'm almost glad to see it back. I know a lot of people don't share that sentiment, but I like seeing the Lulu every then and again in a solo lane.
I mean, I don't know. I'm guessing you played against it a little bit too. Sounds from the experience as well. So, knowing that matchup and playing against it, you can already see Eclipse kind of adapting to it. He is up a little bit into CS, even though he's been pressured under. So, good win for him there. We do see 30 seconds, a Cloud Drake will be coming up as the first dragon of this game. We'll have to see if Olaf tries the patented level 4, or 5 solo dragon take.
Ooh, yeah, Clip's taking quite a bit of trait damage there. Going to force him at least a little further back in the wave on the opposite side, which means he steps up to harass. Not much is to be had. And again, as you said earlier, that the Graves is even going to further pressure the Victor away to make sure he can't catch any sort of wave. There's no pressure onto Robbie Bob here. So now the entire bot side of the map is essentially completely controlled here outside of this bottom lane. And you even see Lost in a Moment and Rovex. They want a little bit of pressure, making sure the Graves isn't around, but doing a good job so far for the side of Mirage here, making sure this mid lane is going to be comfortable. And the Graves is going to be able to farm up all too easily.
Yeah, now I want to get your opinion here because Olaf and Graves are known as pretty aggressive early game gankers. We haven't heard peep out of either of them, I think. Yes, we saw him a little bit in the mid lane, but they didn't really show for a gank. Now, is this kind of too much respect being given, or just they aren't finding the opportunities?
The big thing is I think that they're very easy skirmishers. They're not great at ganking. So you jump into a lane as the Olaf. The best thing you can do is throw Qs. And if for CC, I mean, bottom lane, you've got the Tornado. Mid lane, you've got the Gravity Field. But outside of that, you don't have much. Top lane's your best bet for getting ganks off. And I'm surprised we haven't seen much of it yet. But there's a lot of resources for Mirage being thrown around Tony Top as expected. And on the opposite side, I mean, Graves is very similar. With no hard CC, it's kind of hard to make a gank happen. They're more likely to look for fights in the river or kind of fights around neutral objectives early on because they're very powerful in that regard. So we haven't seen that too much. They also both clear really quick. So it's very easy for them to just get in the power farming mindset.
Absolutely. Here, listen. I don't see you anywhere else. I'm just going to assume you're doing the same thing as me. I think that's the consensus between these two junglers, at least for a little bit, as we see a little bit more aggression on this bottom side. And once again, Dragon being taken by City Witty. So again, we did see that coming around just a little bit. It's, tried and true by an Olaf, pretty much patent pending at this point. And so again, first dragon going over to the side of world-class Empyreans.
All too easy here for Olaf to control kind of the neutral objective game at the moment. On the bottom side of the map, you have a very low wave clear combination and very easy harassment coming out of the Senna onto the likes of the Ezreal and Yumi. Top lane, though.
Yeah, nice unstoppable to stop the stun from occurring, so he doesn't have to burn the flash. Actually, collateral damage being thrown down, and Speedo just kind of walks his way out.
Going to be able to get that one off. It was a nice attempt at a gank, but a fantastic Bellows Breath able to prevent the stun from coming through from Tony Top. And after that, again, no hard CC. It's difficult to run anybody down. Hayami doesn't have the red buff for the slow, and yeah, they get him within probably 1-2 auto attacks, maybe 3 absolute maximum, but they don't have the aggression quite yet. More so to make sure that they push Speedo out of the laning phase, and now burnt the TP, actually, which is a nice place to be, so that he can't get out on the map. He can't put this aggression on or get around the Yasuo very easily.
Yeah, and I think something to also take a look at, Speedo went directly for that Thornmail, the Bramble Vest first buy. So not really going for the, I think the mana sustain that we sometimes see out of Orns, instead going straight for the defensive.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a Blade of the Rune King early here for Tony Top, so it's not shocking to see not only the on-hit defense coming through from the Bramble Vest, but also the application of the Grievous Wound, just making sure that Tony Top can't get trade after trade after trade all too easily. We do see now the Ezreal and the Yumi are heading towards the Rift Herald area, and it looks like the Senna is already here, and the Yasuo is going to be roaming. We could actually see a very early game 5-on-5 between these two.
This would be insane. Now, keep in mind on your minimap, Yasuo is still in the base, so I don't think World Class Empyrean will really be forcing this too much. Q does miss by Lost in a Moment. Root goes out on the Hayami, and that automatically means that they are going to back off.
Gorgeous smokescreen there from Hayami. He slammed the door in the face of this team. I thought maybe some aggression could come through. The ultimate hasn't quite come back up for Speedo yet, but certainly they might have had enough there, but that smokescreen prevents them from seeing where he was going to be, and he slows them down also on their approach. Really well played right there. Keep a look. Tony Top's pushing the top lane right now, so you're going to be losing minions up there, so there almost has to be a quicker commitment to this Rift Herald here from the side of Empyreans to make sure they get their hands on that one. And they're going to be now, and Hayami head back, so this is actually going to have to be a difficult kind of fight in here from the side of Mirage.
Yeah, we're going to have to see how they decide to do this. Tony Top trying to move the pincer, but they collapse on him. They say, we don't care. Immediately first blood for City Witty as the Ornn charge comes out and his ceiling gets knocked up. And the rest of Mirage Esports have to back away as their star top laner goes down.
That's an unfortunate situation there. You do have the kill onto Tony Top. He tanks the smite. I don't think he was expecting so quick of a turn from
Mhm.
City Witty specifically. You think like, okay, I could pull somebody away, pull a little bit of pressure out there, but it's a little bit too much here, and Tony Top's going to go down. Again, I've seen him come back from far worse, but the early kill on the Olaf is nice. It means now the pure control of the river and a lot of the neutral camps that will be contested against will easily go the way of the Olaf comparative to the Graves.
Yeah, and I think that also it really highlights the coordination coming out of world class Empyreans, right? Whenever you're getting pincered like that, the one thing you have to do is understand, go to the weaker side of the pinch, and that's exactly what they did. Focus down that one man pincer side, and they're rewarded with the kill in the Rift Herald.
Yeah, and that's the kind of combination and the kind of what you'd like to see in terms of communication and effectiveness coming out from a team like this, where you have the one real engaged source coming through from the Ornn, and the rest of your team being able to follow it so easily. Having that kind of early game presence or that kind of early game communication it's really nice to see having that to start things off. It makes you feel good on the inside, at least knowing that the execution for the composition is there to start with.
Oh, absolutely. Whenever it's the old A team motto. I love it when a plan comes together, right?
Yeah.
That is the way to go for that. So everyone has now gone back to their preferred lanes. Again, gold's still fairly close, only about 1.2k difference, and some of that has come from the plates being taken on both sides. So again, all quiet in this early game.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be difficult at all to try to contest objectives here from the side of Mirage, so I would not... The Rift Herald would have been a rotational thing where they might have been able to sneak it if they were faster in the rotation. They were a little bit slow, and Hayami actually backed during the process, so they were never going to get that. And now bot side control, again, the combination of the Senna having so much range, the poke coming through from Senna, and just the ability to do quite a bit of damage on the Yasuo gives them complete control, especially with the wave clear. Rift Herald, I think, just got dropped to bottom lane as well.
Yeah, they were able to lay down a little bit of damage. That tower is now sitting on, I believe, one plate left.
Yeah, I
So a
think
lot
that's
of early gold going over to the side of World Class Empyrean, as Lost in a Moment just trying to find those little tags on the Graves and Yumi.
Yeah, it's interesting. Hayami walks onto a ward right here, going to try to get a slow on the Lost in the Moment, not going to find it. Again, there's not much control that you have right now over the entire map. The Lulu versus the Victor, especially with Victor having those things. Robbie Bob, bad situation.
Yeah, that's going to be the stun going down as Robbie Bob is going to get sniped a little bit, and the field is going to take it. The zaps are there. Hayami trying to use collateral damage to take it away, but is not able to run away. Double kill for Eclipse. He is a monster on this Victor. Yumi, the cat on the spellbook, is going to be gifted over to Victor. He is now sitting at a triple kill and a 3-0 win for World Class Empyreans.
What are you trying to do controlling the river here without a lot of pressure in the mid or the bottom side? Again, you have no real wave clear. The Lulu is the closest thing you've got to some in the early game. When Athene's had the Dematerializer, so able to, at minimum, probably match what Eclipse can bring at this point. But you also have Dematerializer and has an upgraded Hex Core. Not to mention, I mean, you just have no vision in the river for the most part. You've lost a lot of that coming through. And even if you get the perfect fight, you're still in early game Graves with 2 early game Enchanters. How are you going to take that and win it unexpectedly at any time? The answer is you just don't. You can't be looking this early here on the side of Mirage. You got to get your team into the mid-late game. Give up the first few objectives. That's what they've done. They've given a little too much in terms of those 4 kills, but they're not out of the woods quite yet. But if they continue this rampant of taking too much, it could be problematic.
I mean, and you're talking about rampant just taking over the map. What better way to do that than to have an Infernal Soul potentially on the table here? Mountain Dragon was a second dragon, so we do have the Infernal Dragons making an appearance on this Rift, and that is going to be highly contested from both these squads, as we did see first tower go down on that bottom side. Rovex and Lost in a Moment have taken first tower, as well as 5 plates to their name.
I will say the Infernal Soul does actually give a lot more to the side of Mirage, because again, with multiple supports having shields, heals, things of that sort, and a lot of range, it's a little harder to hit them consistently with those spells that are going to be proccing that thing. And obviously, Ezreal is going to be using that as often as possible. Basically, off cooldown, that Infernal Soul is going to be getting its use very, very quickly. But yeah, I think that's the case. But being 2 dragons up, controlling the river, and a 4,000 gold advantage is kind of the air of what you would want here on the side of Empyrean. So far, we haven't seen the real fantastic adaptation from the side of Mirage that makes me think that they're ready to play this high skill composition at least.
Yeah, sitting at 4-0 and taking stock as the 14-minute mark just passed us. I want to say 7 plates to 1 in favor of world-class Empyrean. I mean, their early game pressure and aggression has definitely been lending itself to that 4.4K lead that they have. And I mean, if they continue this, do you see any options? I know you said mid to late game, but honestly, is there a time where they just outright win towards the latter stages of this game?
I think, again, the win condition at this point, at least in my mind, if you're not able to get back to a place where you feel like you can team fight with double ADC, double Enchanter, which I don't know that that was ever the case in the first place, is the pressure of Jax in the top side, or at least on the split side of the map, because he's able to draw one of the members, especially the Ornn, off of the side lane, able to pull that away, and solo kill just about anybody once you get to that 2-3 item mark. On that 2-3 item mark, Tony Top's going to have the pressure. The question is, how much do they lose before that moment? Because right now, it's looking like it'll be too much.
Yeah, and you were talking about items. I want to take stock as we seem to have a little bit of calm as this top lane tower is being pressured. Looking at items going down the list, again, components still being lifted, but in that mid lane we do see, I believe that is the perfect hex core being completed by Eclipse, and then the Athene's Unholy Grail being completed in the mid lane. So Phantom Dancer is the only other completed item besides jungle items as well. So very few item power spikes coming through just yet.
Yeah, at least nothing that's going to pop off for the most part. Blade of the Ring King is going to be done for the Jack soon, which will put him in a decent situation to fight up against the Ornn and especially take towers with all the attack speed. But it's not going to be enough till the Trinity Force comes in to really split push with. The Victor is the most terrifying part in my mind right now. Clips on this Victor looks scary. Has the Hex Core, as you said. The Sword Shoes will likely be going to the Lich Bane, and if he catches somebody out, you might honestly need both the ultimate from Lulu and the Yuumi attached to somebody just to keep them alive through all of that.
Yeah, and you know, with this early game pressure, it feels so tense. We're sitting here watching this game, right? And I think this is one of the few games that I've seen such a low kill count, and it's just methodical play. But the build up to, there has to be an explosive moment where everything kind of pops off. We just saw the Rift Herald take it once again, so expecting a 4 to 5 man push coming out of world class Empyreans. I mean, the anticipation is there.
Anticipation's there, although if the explosive play never comes, that almost goes in the favor of Mirage, so long as they're not just giving things away as best as possible. They have to compete for some stuff, and they have to know that they're willing to fight. But again, if Mirage is down 6 outer towers, 3 dragons, and 2 Rift Heralds coming into the 25-minute mark, but you got the itemization of your champions, you still have a way to win the game, which is, I think, the important thing. A lot of teams have a trouble pulling off the throttle sometimes and giving things, especially when it comes to towers, neutral objectives. You get really antsy and really afraid of giving that power over, but you have to know where your composition is going to get strong. And if you don't get there, you're not winning the game anyway, especially, again, 2 ADCs, 2 enchanters, not easy to play. You got to get to the items before you even consider it.
Yeah, and a very well-timed Rift Herald being dropped mid, specifically at 10 seconds until the dragon spawns. So using this Rift Herald to try and lay down some mid lane pressure, it's having some trouble. Definitely having some trouble, but is able to get one charge off, so that is going to be mid lane outer tower. All outer towers are down, and that means world class Empyreans get free reign of this dragon. They are taking so much, and they're just bleeding Mirage Esports dry at this point.
Ooh. Tony Top versus Eclipse, easy.
Yeah, just a little bit of an ultimate being used there, and again, Tony Top, it's Tony Top. He's probably going to get away, but again, taking a fair bit of damage in that trade as well.
Eclipse is really, really strong. And as much as Tony Top, I know, wanted to go in on a fight like that, he had no idea where the remainder of the team would have been, even if he takes that 1-1. Now he's in some trouble. Has to flash to get away from that ultimate, and they're going to double down on this bottom lane tower. This is the trouble you run into. They get this bottom lane tower, and I'm thinking that maybe now the bleeding needs to be staunched here from the side of Mirage. Otherwise, you're just going to lose everything before you get the chance to fight.
Yeah, but look, there is no response from this Mirage Esports squad. Graves is still farming topside. Lulu was all the way on the top side of the map on her own. And it's just like there seems to be almost no coordination to stop this aggressive and methodical push.
Again, I don't mind being able to give things up. I think that's a really improvable skill that a lot of teams may be able to have. But again, as you said, if you're not getting anything on the map, then things are really, really problematic. Yeah, they're only down about 6,500 gold, but 6,500 gold is exactly what I just said. It's not easy to overcome. And yeah, like I said, 2-3 items, when they start to come around, you're going to feel really strong. But even at that point, if you're down to a 4th item to everybody else on the other team, especially to Eclipse, who's taking it upon himself to figure out how much he can get done, in this game. 3 kills already. The Magi is starting to stack up as
Yeah.
well. It's gonna be really mean on this Victor.
That's when you know that something just like I feel that's like the solo queue BM move, right? You pick up the you pick up the Medjais even though it's not fully stacked on 10, and the other team immediately zones in and hones in on you, right? It's just like it's a challenge at that point.
They're trying to deny those stacks as much as possible. And I'm considering also the remainder of the composition here from Mirage, and I thought to myself, like, where exactly do they win if they're not winning through Tony Top or something along those lines? And there were no resources thrown up there. Hayami wasn't looking for ganks. Robbie Bob wasn't looking for roams. They weren't really playing all that much. They left him alone in a lane up against an Ornn, and yeah, he took the lane pretty definitively. In fact, he's up about 600 gold over his opposition, despite 4 kills, 3 dragons, 2 Rift Heralds going the way of the other team. But that's not going to matter, again, if he's not able to make the split push happen until 10 minutes from now, because 10 minutes from now the game's going to be over.
Yeah, literally all global objectives were taken, as we do see Eclipse getting jumped on by Robbie Bob. Taken quite low, Ignite was used as well, but mid lane was pressured out even more. So again, a little bit of a win right there, a little bit of a tussle in that mid lane, bottom lane, also seeing some skirmish action, but no deaths throughout this entire thing so far. Hurricane shipped away by a Cillian to make sure Yasuo doesn't get anything big, and again, nothing lost, nothing gained.
For the most part, but again, the dragon is going to be spawning very soon. Actually, Hayami is in a pretty bad situation. Never mind, I'm just going to blast code over. I was really worried for him because I don't think he saw everybody coming. He's like, wait, I thought this was my team.
Oh, but no, that does mean Tony Top is without flash, without anything, and this is a 5-man gang squad coming down. Eclipse gifted his 4th kill, 100% kill participation, and having about 80% of the kills, and that is going to be a massive win as the push continues on that bottom side for world-class Empyreans.
And this is where I'm starting to lose faith in right now what was the Lulu pick. I like Lulu in the mid lane in very specific compositions, but in this one I'm not really seeing the value. Just now getting the top lane tower, able to grant that one, but you lose so much across the map. The gank onto Tony Top, you lose all of bot lane pressure. Mid lane's going to get shoved in here, and you have a minute until the dragon comes up. That's Infernal Soul almost uncontested here, or unless you want to just throw your bodies at a fight, but you're not winning anything right now.
Yeah, and you know, yeah, scaling is there, but it's just, it feels hopeless at this point. It feels like Mirage Esports just gave too much. They were walking through the desert, right? They saw a glimpse of what could be a win, and they went for it, and it's not there for them, right? So, yes, the composition is sound, but I mean, do they start looking towards that next game right now, or is there still hope right now for them?
I wouldn't use the word sound to start with. when you're running 2 ADCs and 2 supports, you're already going to be in some risky territory, and it's a very tough composition to execute on. And you're seeing that they don't have the raw skill, they don't have the raw mechanics as a team to be able to take it to the Empyreans. Maybe a little bit of, I wouldn't say disrespect, but maybe underwhelming or underrating their opponents just a little bit here by trying to take so many priority picks early on, not giving it the attention that it needs. And yeah, like a Cillian's, Ezreal, you get it 2 games in a row, you take it 2 games in a row. The Graves, you grab it again if they let it through. Tony Top's Jax, you want that. Look at this, level 14. He's going again on this top side. Eclipse is going to get him, though.
Oh, but look at that output. Eclipse just destroying Tony Top's health bar, and that immediately signals that this might be the dragon being given up. But here we go, jump all the way in. Hayami trying to make the big plays. Phase Rush keeping him safe and sound as Cillian on the backline trying to poke him out, but he has no damage as Yuumi caught out for everything. Actually, that was the Lulu, as Yuumi is now going to pop out of the hold on Graves, and that's just gonna be, I will find you, finding his death, if you will. And suddenly, in a desperate attempt to try and find something, they only meet their demise in Infernal Soul taken off the board. This looks like Empyreans win.
It really does. They're going to be walking towards this Baron, and outside of just a miracle steal coming through here from a Cillian, I don't see it happening whatsoever. I can't harp enough about the fact that the composition wasn't there. And again, there were ways to win. You have to set up the Jax really, really well. Yeah, you got what was a 2-level advantage over Speedo. You have good farm. You have good gold across. Where actually still holds a 400 gold lead. That's going to be a race when the Baron gets taken here. But certainly, it wasn't enough. They didn't get Jax fed fast enough. They didn't have everybody else completely isolate their lanes. If they give up the first 2-3 dragons, first 2 Rift Heralds, give up their outer ring of towers, but they get Tony Top a couple of kills, they get a decent CS advantage, 2-3 items on a Cillion, maybe Hayami has his first 2 items completed. Yeah, this is a game they could look to fight, but they gave up so much in terms of gold across before even the Baron in that final dragon came through. I don't think there was ever a competition whatsoever. Jax has no agency in the side lane to outpush an Ornn, and the rest of the map is just defeated pretty much across the board. You've seen that in a couple of fights.
Yeah, and it's felt so tame. Again, this game, not much action going on. The few kills that came through were pretty not, surprising at all. So looking towards, this second game as this first one is starting to wind down, where do you see Mirage Esports really hedging their bets, right? We talked about Tony Top, and you said they're going to try and go for it, but what would you like to see in game number 2 as changes to the draft?
I know Graves is a very strong champion, and I don't think that you give it up for the most part if they're going to let it through all that often, but I do prefer to see Hayami on something he can get aggressive with early. I know he's a very avid Rek'Sai player, and I don't mind Rek'Sai right now in the right composition, and I think it fits pretty well. Yeah, you don't want to give up Graves or something for it, but it's very, very strong. You can do some good work, and it's much better at setting up Tony Top in the top lane on this Jax, Cillion in the bottom lane, trying to get something like that. But you need some sort of CC, some sort of ability to play around somebody. Right now, it is not Tony Top, because the Jax is strong, but you can't play around only limited CC on a split push based champion.
Yeah, and here we go. Citywitty caught out a little bit as Counter-Strike doesn't find his mark, and that's the signal to go in straight for mid lane. Inhibitor tower goes down. Health bars are a little bit low. Graves looking to try and fight, but that Infernal Soul keeping everyone at bay. That's going to be the Dawning Shadow, taking a little bit of Hayami's health bar. And Lost Chapter has been used. Cillion trying to find the poke, but again, not really finding any connection. Inhibitor does go down, and the rest of this world-class Empyreans showing that, save for that one tower in that top lane, they could have had a perfect game.
And they have nobody to stand in front of them right now. Yeah, Tony Top can do it when he's got the ultimate and his Counter-Strike up. He's able to soak a fair amount of damage. But with the Victor being so powerful, even that's not a priority. And then what do you have behind him? You've got Ezreal damage. That's great. Graves can't frontline. Yeah, you've got a Yuumi and a Lulu, but that's going to run out really quickly, especially against a team that's got so much damage and an Infernal Soul. And even the wave clear, I think, is a little bit lacking at this point. Robbie Bob's in some trouble.
Yeah, that's just the Olaf saying, all right, and Speedo with the snipe from downtown claims his first kill of the game. Eclipse saying hello, Tony Top, and goodbye as he takes his 8th and goes legendary in game number 1. Not exactly the start we thought we would see between 2 top contenders for the division, but world-class Empyrean absolutely putting on a clinic for game number 1. And they will take
be real. It was a loss here from the side of Mirage coming through, but I think a fair amount of that does come from composition. I don't like to use that as a pure excuse for a team, but this game 1 composition was very, I don't even know what to call it. I'm just going to say the word bad. I don't know what to say else other than that. I like the Jax. I like the Ezreal. I don't really like much else in this composition. You get Graves. That's great. Very powerful champion. Yuumi, Lulu, individually powerful champions. You throw this together and it looks like a mess. It's like trying to throw 5 completely different types of meat in the same pot and cook it in the same way and then pulling it out and just being like, what's it taste like? It tastes bad, probably.
Yeah, and like you said, going all the way back to draft phase, drafting that kind of composition, it really does require a high level of gameplay. It requires, minute executions on certain objective controls or certain laning pressures. And so looking forward, I mean, Cillion, we were looking at him to be this massive carry, to be this massive player in the bottom lane, and he gets pretty much shut down from level 2 onwards. Do we expect him to have a higher priority hyper carry champion this time around?
I like him on the Ezreal. I like him on the Kalista. This time they're going to be on blue side, so it is now more so in the realm of reality here for Empyreans to ban that champion away. So I'm curious whether they're going to take their shot at the Kalista, but it's definitely worth first picking. And again, something like the Kalista gives them what they are lacking in this game. That's throwing in a champion, no matter who it is. Yeah, you wouldn't want it to be the Yuumi. You might have to swap out the Yuumi. But if you go everything else in this composition, say you're running Tony Top on the Jax, you've got the Graves, and you've got the Lulu mid. Then say you've got the Kalista and you've got, throw Alistar into this composition, that looks a lot different. You throw it into Eclipse. Eclipse can't just sit there and throw Ease out freely as much as he wants. Lost in a moment, and Rovex can't just sit there and just throw in damage whenever freely. In fact, actually, you look at the damage chart, Eclipse did all the work in this one. Like, this was a Victor who was free to farm all game, picked up early kills in skirmishes that shouldn't have happened, and just destroyed everybody. You can't let that. That's not going to happen 2 games in a row, most likely.
Mm-mm.
But at least take note that Eclipse is willing to take that gold and run with it.
Oh, absolutely. I can also feel the frustration coming out due to compositional issues. So we'll see if Mirage Esports are able to kind of come back, rally behind in game number 2, and try and bring this series a little bit closer to a game number 3. We will be right back. So don't go anywhere when we come back with game number 2 between world-class Empyreans and Mirage Esports. Don't touch that browser.
It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity. About humanity. It's all about humanity.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for game number 2 coming in. What could possibly be the last game of this series between World Class Empyreans and Mirage Esports? And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Game number 1, not exactly as thrilling as we thought it'd be.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of expectation behind Mirage and their ability as both a team and then as individual players, and none of that really got to shine through. Not only from composition, there was just very little gameplay. It kind of looked like maybe the flop over and die. Maybe Mirage got caught sleeping here, but maybe a swap of sides, a little bit of a different composition, new methodology to the way they approach the game, especially against the surging world-class Empyreans, might actually get them to a place where they can take this to a 1-1.
Yeah, and with games, we don't often see this in Upsurge. These kinds of games where it's a methodical. It's almost like a surgical procedure of a game, right? World Class Empyreans, they really almost had a perfect game. Only lost one tower, and I think that was in a trade of towers for like bot lane for top. And so there wasn't much resistance, and so there is a chance that World Class Empyreans come in here and they get surprised by surprise aggression and early game aggressive actions coming out of Mirage Esports.
Yeah, I'm curious whether they're willing to make that drastic a change this early on, whether Mirage wants to take that kind of, come back swinging approach to the game,
Mhm.
or if they want to go a little bit more akin to what we saw last time. They still got the Yumi, the Lulu, things of that sort, and try to flesh out a little bit more of the composition behind what they've got from that point on.
Yeah, and so looking towards composition wise, as we're revving up to get into the draft here, I want to talk about what we can expect to see and what we can expect to not see coming out. Of course, the Victor was one thing that we were kind of wondering about being banned away. However, I have heard mid laners all say that Victor is not exactly the strongest mid lane champion right now. It's more almost a niche pick, but I mean that one looked pretty solid no matter what it was going into.
Yeah, I mean, when you're playing into the likes of a Lulu, when you've got a Graves jungle coming through, it's unlikely you're ever going to get pressured as the Victor. It's the late game scaling of the Victor that makes it so dangerous. That 1, 2, 3 item marks, all of those power spikes are so strong. The Victor just gets stronger and stronger the more items you pick up. But I mean, if you're able to deny that, that's where a lot of it comes through. Which is why the Victor, is it bannable? I don't know. It was very good in game 1 for Eclipse, but I don't know that it has the same success if they run it in game number 2. I'm looking more so at things like Ornn. I'm looking at
Mhm.
things like even maybe like the center if they want to play something against like that. Olaf was really good in game number 2 or game number 1. My apologies from World Class. And Mirage has a lot more flexibility with what they ban out in this case. I think they also have priority on Callista, which means now Varus, Syndra, Callista, all bans they do not have to make at all because they can take any of those whatsoever and be comfortable with what they've got.
Yeah. Looking on Mirage's side, this high level execution, we were talking about what we kind of wanted to see. You were talking about maybe a different enchanter in that mid lane instead of the Lulu. But looking at composition wise and how we see them play in the past, do you expect to see much early game aggression, or do you expect to only see again, Tony Top with that Jax and then just try and have only one or two other priority lanes, or are we going to see full team fight? What do you think they're trying to go for here?
So in this last game, you had Mirage with the Jax and then a scaling composition, which again, that to me is two jigsaw puzzles with flat edges. They just don't fit together, man. It's not going to happen. You can try to force them together all you want. It's just not going to. You got to find what fits together. It's easier to run early game aggression composition with a
Mhm.
Jax because especially with Tony Top's Jax, he doesn't lose lane. You saw in the last game against the Ornn, he dominated, had the CS advantage, the gold advantage, was dominating on the map. If you're winning the rest of the map or you have some advantage to work with on the rest of the map and draw attention away from Jax, it's easier to scale, easier to
Yeah.
get those items. Blade of the Rune King, Trinity Force come through. You're able to finally split push and you start dominating and taking that side lane over and even start winning team fights potentially, which is what I'd rather see Mirage go to. Again, you've got something like the Rek'Sai, my apologies, out of the mid lane coming through for Hayami. I think Robbie Bob's Azir is really strong, and I think Azir has a surprising amount of control in the early game compared to other mages. So I wouldn't be shocked to see adaptations like that. I'm also curious whether they're willing to put, again, I was really shocked not to see the Thresh last game for Mist. He's so good at it. It impacts the map heavily. A lot of CC, good engage, tankiness, defensive. Like Thresh is just a really well-rounded champion, and being strong right now for somebody that plays it so much like Mist, I was shocked to see it not come through.
Yeah, and we saw the Corki ban as well in game number 1 from World Class Empyreans, and to me that almost signals, as you were saying, the Azir pick. And so I'm wondering if we're going to see the same bans but different picks come out, with that Azir possibility. Like you said, the Thresh, give the man something he is extremely prolific with, or extremely well coordinated with, why not put a little bit more execution, especially when you have the likes of Asilian, right? I want to take a moment to focus on him. We haven't been able to really see him shine just yet. You were saying you would still be okay seeing him on that Ezreal, kind of that safe pick, be able to gain a lead on his own, but do you think he would flourish a little bit better if, say, the Thresh was picked? Do you see him going for a much higher skill cap or a much more aggressive ADC in that situation?
I've seen 2 games now, specifically outside of previous in game 1, where Cillian was on Ezreal. The rest of his team wasn't doing great across the map. They maybe had a little bit of gold in their pockets, but for the most part, they're losing. And Cillian can straight carry games. The man
Mhm.
carries games when he's got the comfort champion. It reminds me heavily of his predecessor, Asta. When he was 2-3 items in on Ezreal, the man couldn't be stopped. He could dominate any team fight pretty much single-handedly, and all he needed was a team around to soak some skill shots. That's pretty much all he needed. And so, Asilion on the Ezreal isn't something I dislike. Again, any individual pick that you look at for the side of Mirage from last game was really good. I mean, Jack's top lane, Graves jungle, really heavy. Lulu mid, been really high in priority. Ezreal, Yumi bottom lane, fantastic. Put it together, didn't work. You got to find some other things to run. More preference, more early game. You got to get some different tools in there. But like the individual champions by themselves didn't feel that bad.
hmm And and that is awesome to hear. Still having that confidence in this guy. Again, as a prodigy and everything. But looking on the other side of the board now, we were talking about it, that potential for two very distinct, kind of rising stars of their squads, with Eclipse in that mid lane on the side for world class Empyreans. I mean, this man is nasty. Can't be denied, anything like that. And we saw almost no focus given to him by the side of Mirage Esports. Do you think they have to shut him down, or do you think the option is still there to kind of leave him on an island on his own and try and focus the other lanes?
I think Eclipse is a very good player. I think it's difficult to put him in a hole pretty much no matter what we've seen. But again, the matchup was really positive for him last game. There wasn't much to lose outside of that one poke exchange at the beginning of the game where I think Victor dropped to 200, 300 health, be something along those lines. The Lulu was pretty much on the back foot for the remainder of the laning phase, and Victor was free to do whatever you want. For Eclipse, I think the strength in the mid lane is going to be there no matter what. And Robbie Bob is not somebody who's probably just going to dominate the mid lane matchup. He's much more of a wait for team fighting, try to generate plays around other players, things of that sort, which I do like quite a bit. You don't have to be like a superstar, make all the plays yourself. You can be the system player. You can be the guy that's going to come in and make those Azir walls happen, the flashy Azir wall to set up the Graves, things of that sort. And that kind of Stonewall level gameplay is really, really impressive. And I'd like to see that from Robbie Bob in this one. Play something like Azir, play Rise if you need to for some of the wave clear. You'll play Corki. I don't really care whether you play the Corki or not. I know Cassiopeia got some magic resist buffs if you want to play it into something magic based, but make sure that you're not letting Eclipse run over the game with Robbie Bob. I think Robbie Bob's kind of the key to making sure Eclipse doesn't get out on the map and terrorize.
Yeah, asking him to do that Doin V special going in with those with that oddball champions, and with that team play, kind of pulling the team together, gelling them in. Obviously, we didn't see it last time, but we hope to see it this time for sure, and see a different Mirage Esports. Now, looking at the standings, of course, that was just game number 1, game number 2, and thank you so much to all of you that are sticking around. We are having some technical difficulties. We will have it sorted out here very shortly, and possibly an update as well going into game number 2. I want to turn. I want to do our. Actually, sorry. Thinking about it, we will go to a very short break. It's kind of off of me. We will go to a very short break. We will make sure to give you an update as to what's going on once everything has been sorted out. So please don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for waiting through that technical delay. We had a few complications with some of the technical issues. We also have had a role swap here coming in, as well as a substitution. So big change coming in. Rovex going back to that mid lane with Special K coming in. Eclipse will not be playing in this game number 2. So huge change coming in for the side of World Class Imperium.
Yeah, Eclipse was a massive member of the side of Eclipse or World Class in this last series, and he's been a pivotal part of why we've seen so much more success from the Empyreans over the last couple of weeks. So losing him out of the mid lane is tough. Rovex is a really good player out of the mid lane. We've seen that before. I know just how good he can be, and Special K was never any sort of massive issue for the team. I just know, this roster, this Empyreans roster, has the capability of still taking the games, but again, Eclipse missing is a big blow, especially to what we saw out of game number 1.
Yeah, we are going directly into the draft here. Syndra, Ornn taken off the table. Varus, Kalista, again, taken off the table. Not being allowed to play that champion. Asilian will have to default.
Yeah, nothing shocking coming out here. Again, the Kalista, it's being hovered right now, might not be banned immediately. I would maybe look, okay, yeah, they're just going to go right to it. Making sure the 2 primary ADCs not coming off the board. The Syndra banned out my Mirage, not shocking if Robbie Bob doesn't want to play it. But the Ornn I really like. And again, the setup, yeah, all suggestions being made. Thank you for listening to Mirage. But yeah, the idea of getting rid of those combinations, getting rid of those champions as best as possible, making sure that there is no potential for the Senna to be run as that kind of support ADC, getting all those free stacks from the grasp, or the Ornn being the nuisance that it was.
Yeah, and this time around we're definitely seeing a different composition that will have to come out of World Class Imperium. So Varus, Kalista, and Trundle, same bans taken away. And again, Mirage does pick up Ezreal for Asilian, and like you said, he does still have the potential, and they automatically pick that one up. Possibly a Graves pick here for WCE.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the priority pick, and I know, WCE had to be thinking about that now. The Yuumi being grabbed would be interesting because that does set up for bottom lane to be the potential play. There isn't a lot more that's safe beyond the Ezreal and the Varus that can wave clear safely to allow Yuumi to roam around, but I'm curious if the Olaf comes through or the Graves comes through, because of course those are the 2. Graves could come through no matter what, but the Olaf could also be a priority here if they want it, because it pairs so well with the Yuumi. I think it matches the strength of what a Graves would be able to bring to the table. It is the Graves instead coming out for the side of World Class.
Yeah, and almost like a kind of a disrespectful run back from WCE, saying, all right, you tried it game number 1, we'll take it this time. We'll kind of show you how it's done, locking in that Graves, possibly seeing an Olaf coming out here for Mirage if that's the next pick on the list. However, I'm interested now, Ezreal, like we said, the possibility of Thresh coming out for Miss in that bottom lane, that might be a potential, but no, they go for the Xin Zhao.
I remember back a little while back when Graves had started to step into the meta. It wasn't very recently, but a little while back. Xin Zhao had started to come into the meta, and it was really like the favored counter pick for the Graves. You can take it in a close-up matchup. You have ways to both engage and disengage from the Graves, and also the ultimate's enough to knock him away because he's very close-range ADC, so it's an interesting adaptation. Nautilus Ezreal can get aggressive on the bottom side, especially into the likes of the affiliates that you see drafted here from World Class Esports. So we're seeing a squishy composition like we saw in game 1 for Mirage versus a lot of engage that has already been taken by the side of Mirage this time. Very swap, I think you pointed out. It looks like a swap almost of compositions already.
Yeah, double ADC with one enchanter so far. We do see bans coming out. So top lane bans coming out of WCE and mid lane bans coming out of Mirage. There is the infamous Jax potentially being banned away. It is. So Tony Top will have to find something else he can carry with.
Typically, if you're Tony Top in this particular game, you actually have a really good opportunity to play Vladimir at the moment if you can pick something out of the mid lane, because that's been kind of the go-to after Jax in terms of individual picks. You can play things like the Wukong, the Set, the Ornn, anything that's kind of meta. But really, the 3 that you think about are the Jax, the Renekton, and then the of course, the Vladimir coming through. The Set is really bad or really good in the Jax. It is going to be the Wukong. That's mildly shocking. And the Galio, this team comp is mean for Mirage.
So we went from high-level execution to straight up, I don't care, we're faceballing it, and WCE respond with kind of the same composition that we saw before, a potential carry top and an enchanter in that mid lane.
That's terrifying to think about. In the last game, I actually talked about during the break, where I was like, okay, if you're going to take an enchanter, it's not going to be Lulu, it's going to be Karma. Here we go, it's the Karma. Mid lane, thankfully, that's going to be the case. I am actually terrified for the prospect of a Lulu or a Karma going into the Galio, because it's a very mean engage champion, good amount of damage, good wave clear early, and has very good team fights, so not going to really get outscaled in that regard. And there's a lot of pressure now put onto the Aphelios and the Graves. Once again, you don't have that control of the map. The Galio, the Xin Zhao are a formidable duo to control the jungle.
Yeah, and again, it's like nothing really changed from game number 1 except for the team swap sides, right? You know, it's just like the team names, that's all that's swapped. We're seeing pretty much a face everything front to back, rush it down as hard as we can composition coming out on blue side, and then red side having that high level execution. The question is, because we saw both teams playing game number 1, do you expect to see the same level of passiveness come out of WCE that we saw from Mirage Esports in game number 1?
Let's take an examination of every lane by lane, just as a quick overview of what you would expect to see. So first things first, you have the top lane. It's set into Wukong. I don't think that's a bad matchup for the set. I think it's hard to find a really good matchup into the set. In the Wukong, it's more of a team fighter, can skirmish, can auto. I've seen it win this matchup before, and of course it's Tony top, so you gotta think he knows how to win the matchup. But I don't think it's not like definitively Wukong or set kind of oriented in that particular regard. I think Wukong's not bad into it, and set's not bad into Wukong. Unless it's a skill disparity or mistakes being made, I doubt we'll see any sort of massive lead being generated from either of these top laners outside of, again, skirmishes or something like that. Mid lane, Galio versus Karma, I gotta favor Galio here. A lot of tankiness, a lot of damage to come through, and the ability to control the map, has really good wave clear. It doesn't have to use the ultimate like the Karma does. I really like the Galio pick into the Enchanter. And then, of course, you've got the bottom lane where you've got Nautilus Ezreal, a lot of engage, a lot of good damage, a single target focus here to burst out the Aphelios even through the heals of Yuumi. I don't see a winning lane here for the side of world-class esports.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much WCE saying we know how to play that type of composition. We'll take it this time. And Mirage Esports saying all bets are off. You know, the heavy weights have been lifted from our bodies. We will run it down if we have to with this composition. So, you know, you pointed out pretty much there are no winning scenarios for the side of world-class Empyreans. If you had to pick, obviously we have to find a way that they don't lead too much during this game. Where would you look for the side of WCE to really put their early basket or early eggs into a certain lane?
So for starters here, if you're looking at who's got the strength in their composition, if Aphelios doesn't get engaged on very often and can focus more towards the team fighting aspects of the game, the Aphelios will do really, really well late. The only person you really can't actually put a lot of... Actually, Galio's pretty tanky, Wukong gets kind of tanky, Xin Zhao can deny that damage, but really Aphelios can clean up a fight afterwards once a lot of the ultimates are burnt from this team. There's plenty to trade about once those ultimates are gone. So the Aphelios is one. The big difference, I think, with world-class esports, the set top lane means that you now have more of a team fighting bruiser rather than the Jax, who's a lot more of a split pusher. And B, you've got the Karma mid lane, which I think does better at wave clearing and controlling the mid lane than something like the Lulu might, and is less susceptible to engage because of the ult W, the ult shield coming through. So it's more likely that the Graves has some priority to fight against the melee Xin Zhao in the river, as long as Karma is able to kind of push the Galio in to some extent, or at least keep the lane even and not get punished from that. So there's some more strength than what we saw last game from the side of world-class Empyreans compared to Mirage in game 1, but we're going to see very similar things happen.
All right, well, there you go. Now looking at it overall, right? If we get to that late game stage, if we get to that point that, in our honest opinion, you know, Mirage Esports were never able to hit, do you see some flaws and weaknesses coming out of Mirage Esports composition? You know, it is very much an ultimate heavy composition. I mean, do you think this team can run into some issues in that mid to late game if they're pushed towards it?
While, yes, I believe that they're ult-driven in their initial engagement, even if you survive the initial engagement here, there's not a ton of burst damage. So, like, Set has good damage, Karma's got good damage, Yuumi's got good damage, but most of their damage is consistent. It's mostly from Graves, Aphelios, or Graves once the ultimate's gone. It's mostly consistent damage coming out of this team on the side of world-class Empyreans. Asilion is on the Ezreal. Like I said, I love this guy on Ezreal, and that's not an ult-driven champion. That is a champion that just needs you to block skill shots. As long as the Aphelios isn't directly on, the Ezreal, you don't get that good engagement. You keep Ezreal safe. As long as you've got one of the remaining members on the team who can sit there and soak, Asilion should have a way to win a fight basically on his own afterwards. So, they have a good initial engagement with their ultimates, and then Asilion's got their backup damage after an ultimates have come through. I do really like top to bottom the way Mirage has designed this comp.
All right, so, you know, flipped on its head, everything has changed. You know, Mirage is just All right, we're gonna play hardball. We'll see what happens, and then WCE obviously throwing up the taunt a little bit with this type of composition. So we'll have to see how it plays out. But before we do go into that short commercial break, I do want to talk about one of our other fantastic sponsors, Kono. If you are looking to take your game to the next level, it all starts with your peripherals. From keyboards to keycaps, mice, and more, our friends at Kono have got you covered. Kono works with some of the world's best designers, inventors, and makers to bring you some of the best gaming peripherals around. Kono have been huge supporters of us here at Upsurge and have made generous contributions to our prize pools. When you find a new keyboard, one of the best ones that you can check out is the Hexgears X1 RGB low-profile Bluetooth mechanical keyboard. You can also use the discount code UpsurgeGG for 7% off your first order. For more information, head over to kono.store to check out all they have to offer. Now, if you have stuck with us this far, thank you so much. We will be going to a very short break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with game number 2 between world-class Empyreans and Mirage Esports. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to game number 2, which could potentially be the all end to the entire season for these squads. Again, game number 2, world-class Imperium up 1-0 in this series. This could be the decider for Mirage Esports to drop down to second place.
But it could. We're going to see that come out. Actually, we see a pretty quick invade coming in here from the side of a world-class Empyreans. Asilion, you're in the river. Thank you very much.
We did see world-class Empyreans do this before and get number 1 to Tony Top. However, going through the bottom lane to get a decent chunk down on Asilian, so pushing him out a little bit and forcing that tempo change is kind of the same thing.
No.
Wait,
Fuck,
what?
no.
Speedo?
Please.
Speedo? Are they? Oh, they. Oh no!
God.
So,
No. That feels so bad. They literally 5-man found a Cillian under his tower. They doubled his death count for the whole series with a 5-minute thing.
what?
Oh, all right. Well, that sets the tempo for this game out of world-class Empyreans, doesn't it? Is willing to 5-man dive underneath the tower. City Witty doesn't even have his health bar back.
You can't see it. I'm half crying right now because that came out of nowhere. We were wondering, right? We were talking about it at the beginning about the side of world-class Empyreans and having pretty much an identical composition to game number 1 for Mirage Esports, and how they were going to try and take control of this early game. I mean, that's one way to do it. Again, Asilian didn't burn any summoners, but still, getting first blood for Speedo in the top lane, that's got to account for something, right?
Yeah, it has to be Asilian just got floored by that. I think the only like actual decent approximation of what we just saw. Ooh, actually, double flash from Speedo and Tony Top. Pull off the, please throw off the. I don't even know what to say about this right now.
This game is already more entertaining than game number 1. I have to say it. As you see, mid lane 2. This is it. Robbie Bob. It might get hit. No, the Q doesn't land. Oh my gosh, this is ridiculous.
World-class Empyreans is just on full vibe check mode across the map. Every one of their opposing laners, they're just like, are you going to flash? Are you going to use a burst summoner? What's going to happen? And thankfully, they won pretty much every situation. They lost. Oh, no.
Oh, no. Oh, no. No, Rovex.
Rovex gets run down in the mid lane. That feels sad. How is this early game happening right now? This looks like a silver early game at the moment. 5-man dive.
Oh, man.
Oh, my goodness. He stepped into tower range, too. Like, he stepped into tower range, take a tower shot. Ended up dying to that process. Feels really bad on both sides here.
Oh, it does, but that just goes to show they have already doubled the amount of kills that they got in this entire series so far. 1-1 across the board. This is crazy watching this happen as Tony Top and Speedo go at it a little bit on the top side as well. And bot lane. Oh, are we going to get a 4-man dive?
Getting revenge.
Oh, this is a 4-man teleport coming in, but this is a taunt. The Lost in the Moment is trying to get his way out, but he's not able to do it. He goes down to Robbie Bob. But Speedo is able to claim one on the back end, and that's going to be 3-on-1 here as Special K tries to walk back, and the poke is there. We do see Karma roaming around the side here. 1 Empower Q does land, but does almost no damage. Speedo, you're below 200 health. You get the shield up, but you're still extremely squishy. He goes down, shut down onto Speedo, and now they're chasing Hayami. Mike gets stunned up. The tether is there, but Rovex has to walk away. And what is this early game? They want it all. Hayami takes the bounce of the bullet, and that's going to be the channeling of the taunt as Robbie Bob has to try and walk away, but on the backside we do see I will find you looking for the hook. He gets it onto City Witty, and this is just ridiculous. Whirling Winds goes out from Robbie Bob as the shutdown goes down onto Lost in a Moment, and that's going to be 2 kills, possibly 3. There it is, double kill over to the Aphelios, and this elongated fight. The hook goes out. I will find you. This is absolutely ridiculous. That's going to be the 6th kill for the squad and 2 kills a minute. At 5 minutes, it is 6-4.
As much as I like to think that this is just clown fiesta right now from both teams, I see the benefit coming through from Empyreans. Game number 1, we saw Mirage run a similar composition where they have multiple ADCs, they've got multiple kind of damage sources and supports coming through, and they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything at all. So it's the complete opposite here for the side of Empyreans. They say, let's fight all the time and try to utilize this range, this damage, and the support that we've got in the early game to get some advantage, to try to get some momentum going early. it's working for them. They're up 2,000 gold so far. They've got 3 kills on your Aphelios, which is, of course, that team fighting presence that you're going to need. And even in the top lane, you have the Vampiric Scepter and the early advantage here for the set up against the Wukong. Like, this is a good way to start things off. If this is a skirmish-heavy team coming through from the side of Mirage, if this is a team-fighting team, if you have the disadvantage, it's a little harder for you to pull things off.
Yeah, not only that, it definitely felt like Mirage Esports were pulled into the tempo of world-class Empyrean, right? That tower dive in the bottom lane, I feel wasn't exactly as necessary as we might expect. They dive the tower, they pull a teleport, yes, and then they get caught out, pinched out, and then Nautilus coming around, giving them maybe a little bit of false hope. But here we go. We do see a taunt going down in that mid lane. Rovex might get jumped on here. He has no flash. Q misses. Shield is not up. And that is the power of the Galio in the mid lane against a quite immobile support enchanter.
Now, you see, that's the kind of play I expected to see throughout the majority of this early game. Just single CC coming out from Robbie Bob, and then Hayami following up on it, whether, Tony Top doing the same thing with some CC from Hayami. If it's I Find You, it's Cillian following up. There's little tiny 2v2s, 3v3s. That's where a lot of the pressure can come from here, because you start to get a lot of value from the CC.
Yeah, that's going to be a little bit of a tussle in that top lane, as well as Speedo and Tony Top are trying to find their ground once again against CS. Fairly even in that top side, but the jungle disparity is probably where it's at. It's so interesting because Xin Zhao has 3 kills, but half the CS of City Witty, but City Witty is sitting at only 3 assists. So the gold, surprisingly, is 400 in favor of Hayami. So something to keep track of going into the rest of this early game.
I also want to point out right now that the Aphelios had 3 kills early on, and because of that, you have the early BF sword, literally an entire BF sword ahead of his opposition here. Cillian has the exact same itemization, minus 1 BF sword, which means all of the push pressure that you might have had with the combination of the Nautilus, the Ezreal's already low wave clear, now goes completely to the way of loss in the moment. And that, because of that, of course, also the farm on the Graves being very relevant, you're going to have Dragon priority, and that's why you're seeing this one come in right here, because there is no response from the Ezreal and the Nautilus, who are trying to make things happen in the bottom lane, trying to make sure that they don't just get pushed in constantly. And the mid lane Karma does have enough to work with that Robbie Bob Chance can't just wildly walk down into the river.
Yeah, and that's also going to be 10% CDR for the ultimates across the board for World Class Empyrean. We do see the Ocean Dragon coming out for the second, so that does mean we have a chance to see an Infernal Soul once again come up in this series.
Infernal Soul for the side of Mirage, I think, would literally be GG, because you have so much initial engage. To stack that much damage from an Infernal Soul would make it near impossible for a team as squishy. Even with the Karma, even with a Yuumi here, it would be almost impossible to try to mitigate all of that damage that would be coming through from the initial engage from this composition. That's at least from what I would see. Again, losing the first dragon, not too relevant. The Aphelios is certainly going to love having that, but pretty much everybody else doesn't mind too much. It's not going to mean that much.
Oh my gosh. Speedo just straight up dueled Tony Top out of that top lane. And I mean, this is something that, like you had pointed out, we were kind of expecting with Speedo getting some of those early kills and being able to grab that early cutlass. Do you see Tony Top coming back in this certain situation?
Now, in fairness, that had also been a back advantage coming through from Speedo. So you had the Cutlass, you had the Dagger, and he had the armor coming through on the 2 kills that he achieved in the early game. And the response here from Tony Top is interesting, because rather than go for Blade of the Rune King or Trinity Force, which are very kind of lane heavy, instead goes for the Tiamat to try to control the laning phase, try to control the wave clear specifically, to force the set from just being able to dominate the laning phase. Now you clear the wave as best as possible, and you're able to get quite a bit. Now Rift Herald actually goes the way of Mirage here, because they roamed their bottom lane up, and Tony Top's on the bottom side to respond to this pressure down here.
Yeah, and so this is an audible being called by Mirage Esports saying Tony Top needs to head down bot, can't contest with Speedo. The question is this Speedo can actually replicate this aggressive early game onto Cillian? So that's going to be a big question, I think, on everyone's mind if he can, because if that's true, that puts two opponents down in the hole for gold.
They're looking for an engagement onto this bottom lane here. Nice flash, good hook!
Yeah, that's gonna be the hook, and everything's there, and the knockup lands as well, but the teleport as well, and the root Gravitum is able to keep Robbie Bob in this fight, but that's 4 members on the bottom lane, 3 for the side of World Class Empyrean, and that means a major push advantage for Graves in that mid lane.
case. It's really rough. The engagement tries to come down on the bottom side, but they spotted out so early that there is no response to come through. And of course, the mid lane, a couple power plates picked up. Now, Hayami getting aggressed on here too.
Oh yeah, there it is, and the flash forward as well to keep Hayami there. He does have flash, but he's rooted, and that's going to be City Witty picking up that kill. Speedo under the tower, dueling out, but we go right back to that mid lane jungle fight as City Witty has that double kill in his pocket. He is just shredding him down, and this looks like it is all world-class Empyrean as the Cyclone comes out, but it's just not enough. Tony Top drops for a triple kill. I will find you. About to find his gray screen and his third death of the game. We thought this was going to be close, but it feels like it's nothing anymore. The snipe is there and lost in the moment. Claims his 4th kill of the game.
This is what we were missing from game number 1 from the side of Mirage, and I think the Karma is a big part of it. When you're able to punish the roaming nature of the Galio here as the Karma, and you get the invades alongside this Graves into the likes of Hayami, who again, as you said, is well behind in farm, you make plays like this happen. This team wants to collapse really heavily. You have a lot of CC, you have a lot of good team fights, but you don't have the gold to respond to this. That early game advantage, again, Aphelios has the BF sword. You've got the full warrior, which was tied at the time with Hayami, the Blade of the Rune King on Speedo, and that top lane 1v1 was rather unfortunate because it was really close coming between Asilion and Speedo in that regard. But again, when you've got more items, more gold in general to win the early game team fights with, you're baiting them in with this. This is really nice play.
Yeah, speaking of baits, that was beautifully done by Robbie Bob. This might actually collect a double kill. He does go down, and the shutdown to Robbie Bob is a beautiful sight to see. However, do you see the fight on the bottom side? The bushwhack is there. Asilion may be able to get himself out to safety. Might be there, but no, the sniper is able to do its work. Lost in the moment, might be able to stay alive. He flashes away, and he survives. The heals enough to bring him back to about 200 HP. But the tower dive is possibly coming about. Hayami brings out the teleport from Speedo. So the aggression is there, and they claim a 1-for-0 in the bottom lane, but lose 2 in the mid lane.
A good little play there from the combination of Lost and Special K to get the aggression out of nowhere that came onto Asilion. Although in the middle of that fight, Asilion threw a single Mystic shot at Special K. That little bit of damage would have killed Lost in the moment. It would have been a 1-for-1 trade for I Will Find You, and that's a lot of damage that would have been denied. Also, Special K no way would have been able to push off that Rift Herald with the combination of Hayami and Robbie Bob on the way down. And now, because he is kept alive, he stays here with the healing of the Yuumi coming through. They're going to get first tower of the game on the bottom side here.
And my gosh, if anything, this looks like an accelerated game number 1. Might not be the perfect game that they're looking for, but they are up a massive amount. 2 dragons to the name. It's only going to be a Mountain Drake or Soul, so not going to be that massive poke potential that we usually see, but that's definitely going to stop the burst potential coming out of the side of Mirage Esports. World-class Empyrean, if we take a look at the gold as well, I mean, I just want to point out 4K at 1320 on the clock. Ridiculous lead for them.
Yeah, right now, I'm even more terrified because of the fact that, again, you've got this massive gold lead, 4,000 gold here in the pocket of world-class Empyreans, and this is a team that wants to fight all the time. You want to take multi-person fights to try to get the gold back in your favor, to try to take advantage of these kits that you got on the side of Mirage, but that's not going to be the case. Here's an invade into the likes of the Graves.
Yeah, and that's going to be the grand entrance being used. Taunt might be there, lost in the moment, trying to get away. The Q was there, but the damage is even better. Tony Top, though, looking for the beautiful one. Cyclone lands, lost in the moment, taken very low, but the damage is just not there. What is the sustainability as a white comes through? They tried to gank, but they got ganked instead.
They're baiting fights. That's all they have to do. They're the ones with the massive gold advantage. Your Aphelios right now is sitting on a completed Infinity Edge and a ability, my apologies, a Cloak of Agility. That's, what is it, a 45% crit and a ton of AD on top of the attack speed and all of the stats given to you by Yuumi, as well as the Graves being really far ahead. You take fights like this, you have to make damn sure that they're going to go your way. Robbie Bob jumps into multiple members, not seeing anybody. Here's Asilion being dope.
Oh my lord, Asilion 0-5-2, and the BM emo coming out of City Witty. I mean, it's BM, but it feels deserved with how aggressive this team is playing and how well they're executing these dives.
they're pressing their advantage much better. And the thing is again, the composition on the side of Mirage plays really heavily into checking them over and over again with gold. When you've got Xin Zhao, when you've got Galio, when you've got Wukong, you don't want to sit back, farm, wait for the later stage of the game. You can accelerate the game, get gold back in your pocket if you find a proper engage, but they can't because they don't have the gold to win those fights, even with the right engage that they haven't been able to find yet, even one time. So at the moment, I'm lost for words as to what Mirage can do. They can't try to fight with their composition that's very heavily influenced towards fighting, and they can't wait because they're still in a Aphelios, still a Graves. They're going to be stacking damage on their side. They're in a catch-22 right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you pointed out that there's not much they can do. I think that shows in how they're positioning around the map. They're not clumping up to try and go for any objectives. You see them kind of spread on the map, just trying to push the lanes. I mean, not even trying to look for the picks here. As we do see the Rift Herald being started up on that side of the map. We do see Speedo trying to catch out Robbie Bob. Bork has been used, Protobelt as well, and the taunt might have been made, but Tony Top now trying to dash away and keep himself safe. Might not survive though. The root is there, grab him doing its work, and they're just rounding gold out. They're so happy to clean up this gold.
This is, again, another thing that they're doing right now, and this is a little bit later than I would have wanted it to be, but into their opposition right now, the Aphelios can stay in a solo lane because of how much gold you've got in your pocket. Whereas on the other side, Special K is now spending up with Speedo. Now Speedo is in a rough place.
Yeah, he might be in a little bit rough space, but does get the shield up. Oh my lord. The showstopper is real, as even the Karma is here. This is just demoralizing. A 3-on-1 turns in to a 2-on-2 as the rundown is real. I believe Speedo is going to try and clean up that kill onto Robbie Bob. The flash was there, but I will find you in a battle against Karma. Not going to win that fight, and Rovex picks up his second of the game.
It's a 7,000 gold set playing up against what is effectively 6,300 gold Galio, as well as your almost probably 5,500 gold Xin Zhao. So long as you got a little bit of support coming in here, you're going to be able to turn the 1v1, and you saw that come through, where Speedo once again takes a fight, actually ends up winning the entire fight for his team by just having the gold advantage. It's Mirage not pulling off the throttle because their team can't pull off the throttle. That's what they drafted for, was to fight, but they can't stop fighting even though they're going to lose all of them.
Yeah, this game, I just want to say, in 17 and a half minutes, we have pretty much doubled the amount of kills in game number 1. We've have the time it's taken to get to this point in the game. I mean, we were wondering what would happen with world-class Empyrean without Eclipse in that mid lane, right? We were wondering how that would play into this entire side, but it almost feels like they're cleaner without him. They feel so much stronger, and now lost in the moment. You don't normally see this. He is straight on 1v1ing, but that might be his downfall. He has a 700 gold bounty on him right now, able to survive. Barrier was used, has flash available, is able to get away. Karma trying to come and help him, but it is going to be that shutdown. Redemption was not enough, but the rest of the team is here to do cleanup. That's going to be the showstopper, getting Speedo a little bit closer. Stun is there. Hayami getting punched down to death. Taunt to slow Speedo down, but the root is enough. And that's going to be a 3-for-1 in the top lane. 22 stacks on the Karma mid. Rovex feeling great about himself.
Playing what looked like a sloppy early game or a really aggressive early game to cover the losses of what will be a later game, like a mid-game composition that can't fight for the most part, has just been the absolute dominance coming through from the side of world-class Empyreans. Their command of the early game and all the gold advantage they got onto the right carry at the right time has been everything. And now even Asillion's going to be in some more trouble.
I mean, what more can be said? Depth charge, I think, was used for the first time in this game, and to no avail. I mean, it feels like Mirage Esports were like, okay, we'll take off the weights, yes, and then all of a sudden, world-class Empyrean is just like, all right, we'll do the same, except ours are like 10 times heavier, it's great. They are controlling this game to a T and controlled chaos, it feels like. And I want to get your opinion. What does this mean for the latter stages? Well, I guess I can't even ask you, as we see Speedo going for another fight. Vrovex getting the exhaust down as well as the taunts, and this is ridiculous going on.
It is. This is a very non-standard game, and I would go so far as to say this is a non-standard series from either of these teams. Empyreans playing out of their minds tonight to take this #1 seed in group in the Ocean Division, and Mirage just having a very off night in my mind. Not to mention that their drafting woes in game 1 look bad, and then here we are, game number 2. World Class brings out the same composition and just dominate with it. And again, this isn't a standard. This is what you'd see in every single game. This is Robbie Bob trying to take a fight.
Oh, he might get it, but no, the healing is there as the Moonlight Vigil seals the deal. And we do see a push in sub 20 minutes, a Nexus Tower down. This is pretty much unheard of as Speedo gains his 7th kill of the game. He is now 7-1. Showstopper able to claim another 7-1 and 4, 8-1 and 7 for City Witty. This feels like it's already over, and it pretty much is, as the Cyclone is just there for pretty effects. The final chapter closes the book on this series as the squad is dancing around the fountain.
That is. Yeah, they are dancing around this fountain, waiting for another wave to come out. Okay, there's one kill because City Witty got overexcited, but this is just looking like the end no matter what. Again, I don't know what it was. This early game got so sloppy for Mirage and so well played from World Class. 50-50s all over the place that they ended up taking. Lost the moment standing in the base in middle 4.
Oh my gosh, and look at the healing as well. True Shot Barrage goes out, he might go down. No, the heals are still there. He gets another on his name, but that is going to be the death as they had lost Graves to what seemed like a really disrespectful fountain death, and they are able to pick up a few kills, 4-2 there, but still, the base is in shambles. Not much can be done. 2 inhibitors down at 21 minutes. That just spells the end of this game.
Coming back in this game would not even be a miracle. It'd be a miracle of a miracle right now here from the side of Mirage. At this
I mean, let's go to the miracle side. Let's say it. What has to happen? I mean, like, what would need to happen for Mirage Esports to be able to come back in this game? Let me hear it, Rebel. What's your analysis?
This team's got CC for days and a Cillian on an Ezreal. You get him onto a 3rd item here, you're maybe able to utilize your CC. You see in this fight, that's the example of it. Tony Top, Robbie Bob, I will find you, just constantly CCing a member who has a bunch of gold. You have to go 1 by 1 by 1 and take those fights. Here's City Witty once again potentially getting a kill onto Mist.
I think potentially just turned into probable as City Witty is able to claim that one. I mean, this game is just absolutely a clinic coming out. Taunt actually misses as City Witty dashes over the wall to keep himself safe. Actually stays out of the redemption. He says, I don't need it. I am the man in this mode. But no, the Stone Goliath himself says you will not take that win as the chase continues, I guess. I mean, what more can be said? This is just chaos.
It is. We continue to see this team just walk forward and look for fights over and over again. And look at that! Underneath the tower is Rovex with no damage on this Karma.
All right, and
now pop it off here.
Yeah, I mean, this is lost in a moment. Definitely lost his field of vision, as the team is now giving a lot of kills over. Now, hear me out. We were saying a miracle needed to happen, right? A miracle of miracles. That's 2 times that 4 members have gone down. Granted, 1,000 gold bounty went over to I Will Find You. Not exactly the person you want that on. But yes, it might be trolling. Yes, that could occur. But gold is still coming into the squad. That window has become a lot smaller, by far.
I suppose that's the case. You still have more than enough gold, more than enough control on the map. Look at the wards and stuff. You're TPing into what is effectively the Gromp pit here on the side of World Class Empyreans. They're going to get this dragon for literally, or Baron, my apologies, literally for free. And after this, I mean, what is to stop them from just sitting in these lanes waiting for minions to just pile in? Yeah, Robbie Bob's got some decent wave clear. Tony Top, Tiamat's not too bad either. But eventually, those Baron buff minions are just going to yield a Mountain Soul, I believe, coming through. I think that's what this one is, at least. Yeah. Mountain Soul coming through. And again, you just sit there and you wait for Baron buff minions to push in and you just collect whatever you can off the map. And again, later in the game, you're going to see the same thing happen again and again and again.
Yeah, Twin Shadows has gone out. They might be looking for another fight here. Hayami going in for what feels like a last-ditch effort, as in we go. Robbie Bob does not get a very good ultimate off. That's going to be a 1-for-0 trade so far. But the damage has been done as Speedo gets a very nice stun off. I Will Find You flashes over the wall, but is followed by the as the Showstopper claims his life. Double kill for Speedo. Tony Top, next one on the list, as he goes down to City Witty. And in that mid lane, Robbie Bob getting dance on. Speedo claims an unofficial triple. As Cillian, last one standing, is running for his life. That is gonna signal what is gonna be the end of this game, as you can see the rest of world-class Empyrean pushing on into the base. As Cillian gets bursted out. Nexus Tower is going to fall. Nexus soon to follow. And my lord, what a statement coming out of world-class Imperium going into the playoffs.
I mean, you gotta feel so empowered right now if you're Empyreans, taking a 2-kill or a swift 2-0 over an opponent that was leading you for most of the season, but you got to feel bad if you're Mirage. This felt like such a weird series, top to bottom. You're the team coming in with all the expectations. You're the team a lot of teams can expect to. I know I have expectations for them coming into the playoff time. And yeah, this is a reigning champion. This was First Blood Crusade on the previous year, and they just lost to Empyreans with, two completely different teams. You started off with, it was, I can't remember even who his name is. Well, yeah, Clips in the mid lane to start with. Now it's Rovex, and it didn't matter.
Mm-hmm. This is, I want to, because it's hard to dissect, right? Let's go back to game number 1. Let's start at the very beginning. What we saw between game 1 and 2 are two of the exact same compositions being played on the same exact sides of the rift. The difference is just the teams. Game number 1, Mirage Esports drafted the same thing, and World Class Imperium went a very standard, slow, methodical game. And I mean, it felt like Mirage really just respected them a little bit too much, right?
You want to, like, in game number 1, we'll talk about composition differences very quickly, just because, again, Set is a better bruiser early, better bruiser at team fighting than Jax is. Jax has a lot of scaling. It's a very good pick for Tony Top. He dominates most 1v1 matchups, and it's really good at split pushing. And it can contribute some to fights, but for the most part, it's a split push champion that scales really well versus an early game champion that team fights really well. You got Lulu mid. Like, comparative to most, it's got good later game. It's got really, really good supportive capabilities, and it's got a lot of wave clear to start with the glitter lance, good trading, and fantastic CC with that transmorph or whatever the heck it's called. Polymorph, whatever it's called. I don't remember. But world class, they start with Ornn, who team fights really well. You've got Olaf, who can aggress against the Graves, and then you've got a bottom lane playing against an Ezreal Yuumi that scales really well in the Senna and the Yasuo combination, as well as the Victor in the mid lane to do the same thing. So what World Class is banking on is we can get aggressive early with Olaf, control the river, and then we can win late because we outscale really well. And Mirage's whole hope was the side lane, and they couldn't get any gold going in the side lane. You look at game number 2 composition. Mirage says, we're going to pick a fighting composition. We're going to say we want dive, we want turret diving capabilities, we want just backline capabilities, we want CC, and we want Ezreal on our composition for that consistent DPS coming through. So World Class, they take the same thing. Now they've got the Karma to control mid lane a little bit more, to be able to roam around and help out their jungler, their Graves, aggressing against the Xin Zhao. And now they've got the early game set to team fight with. And what do? They play aggressive early. They say, okay, we've got the stronger mid laner, we got the stronger top laner. Let's throw something at the wall, see if it sticks. And they have the Aphelios also, who team fights really well. And they dominate the early game. And that's the difference, is they dominated early with a better early game composition, got their scaling champions ahead, and they win in the late game. It didn't matter what had happened elsewhere. The control was there both times there from the world-class Empyreans. It wasn't necessarily, I think, even a compositional issue. It was Empyreans knowing how to win with their comp better.
Yeah, and now looking, I want to also bring up the point that was 2 drastically different tempo changes. Game number 1, it was slow, methodical, very, very slow. And then in game number 2, it just popped off. I just want to give credit to World Class Imperium to be able to switch gears like that. Do you think that was a big reason and top priority as to why, Mirage Esports definitely seemed off their game?
I would say that's the case. I think, again, you look at this early game, from level 1, they were literally 5-man tower diving against Sicilian's Ezreal. And from that moment on, it just felt like it was all world class, just making these scraps, making these fights happen. It started with Mirage on the dive. You said unnecessary. I would agree with that. But then even worse is they get a kill, and then they walk out of that fight, and you could take that kill, be done. You equalize some of the early ground. But yeah, you're down 400 gold from the first blood or whatever it is. It's fine. You have a composition that fights later. Find your engagements later. Instead, they stick around in the river, end up getting boxed in by Graves, Aphelios, and Set, and Karma, all these champions that can kind of just fire at you from down a barrel, and they end up getting picked off one by one. And slowly, this continued to happen. Yeah, Mirage found slight fights here and there, but World Class's tempo, as you said, advancing, getting Aphelios a lot of gold, and using it constantly in fights everywhere, making sure they're not going to lose something they shouldn't because they've got more gold. That's all it was. Mirage kept getting just floored by the fact that the gold advantage what was determining the fights, not the fact that they had CC.
Yeah, just insane all around. And then to round it out, I mean, this is a statement being made heading into the playoffs, right? This is a squad that took down what is a reigning champion. They are the underdogs and they slayed the Kings. I mean, the other teams, they have got to be worried about this, right? Like this was not just them playing a series. This was them straight up putting their foot down and making a statement to the other squads.
I would be. I'm going to say Empyreans definitely look like they were at the top of their game today. That's what I'm going to say. I've seen them most of the season through a lot of scouting grounds here, and I think this is some of the best League of Legends I've seen them play today. But again, this is the top level League of Legends we're seeing against what looked like a poor Mirage in a game that, yes, it gets you the number 1 seed, but isn't all that important because both of these teams had already locked. I don't want to give it too much credit for what it was because, again, maybe it wasn't important to Mirage to win this series. Maybe they didn't care if they got the 1 seed because they're in playoffs either way. World Class comes out, they play some of the best League of Legends that they've got, but they just showed a lot of what they can do to a lot of the teams that are going to be top tier. So while, yeah, I really like what Empyrean showed today. I think it's impressive to have your tempo coming in off a big win over a big team coming into playoffs. But I'm curious now, what's the next step for Empyreans? Do they take this first round playoffs as a team that looked like the one that beat Mirage, or do they come out as what could be a second tier team and lose the first round of playoffs? Because if you lose in that first round of playoffs as a number 1 seed, you're going to get heartbroken.
Yeah. And I mean, we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, this is the end of the regular season. So to close it out, to close off this broadcast, I do want to get your opinion. Again, game's very one-sided, but I want to pick an MVP for the series, some world-class Empyreans. I mean, out of all of them, I think all of them played very, very well. Who do you think deserves the MVP award of these members that came in? Of these, I think 6 members total that were able to play today.
That's a tough one. In game number 1, there was quite a decent play coming out from the side of, I don't know. It's really tough because in game number 1, pretty much the unanimous answer was Eclipse. And in game number 2, there's a lot more discussion. I think City Witty is who I'd have to give it to for members that were here for both games, just because City Witty played really well in the Olaf, pressed the advantage, controlled the river as needed to in game number 1. Game number 2, he did anything he wanted. The old adage of Mundo goes where he pleases. City Witty went where he pleased in this series.
All right, well, we'll give it up to both these guys again. Unfortunately, Eclipse did have to be subbed out for game number 2, but City Witty definitely kept it real, and the rest of the squad were able to pull through with a first place finish in the Ocean Division. So congratulations to them. We'll have to see how both these squads stack up towards the latter stages in the playoff region. So once again, congratulations to them. That is it for us here tonight for the Upsurge Premier League, but keep in mind, we have more games coming to you this entire week. So on Thursday, we actually have the Upsurge Contenders League. We will have Reprise versus MSU Summer Squad. They will be on week 5 of the Upsurge Contenders League. And on Friday, the Upsurge Minor League will have some awesome action from 2 teams, which I really like the names. Super Athletic Dads will be coming in versus Ignitus Esports, and they'll be playing on Friday at 8 p.m. EST. Same on Thursday. So be sure to tune in then. Now, from all of us here on the broadcast desk, my name is Orbital. I was joined here by Rebel Fox, Hypertension on that production side. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight, and have a fantastic evening.
You just walk right out the door. Don't wanna do this anymore. Now I'm lost without you. You drive me crazy out